Judges 6, verse 36. So the voice of God comes down and talks to Gideon and says, hey, this is what I want you to do, and tells him what to do. And then he gets into this mode where, okay, so he starts getting his men together, army together, and he's like, God's going to use me to change this place. God's going to use me. I'm going to go out and do this work that God's calling me to do. And then all of a sudden, reality sets in, right? Reality is. And it's happened to me. It's happened to my wife. It's happened to my family. It's happened to a lot of you. It's that point where you know God called you. You know it. I mean, you heard him. I mean, whenever you heard the voice of God, all the tingly feelings that go through your body, the whole thing that you heard from God, it was through Scripture as you're reading your Bible. You heard from God. You know it. And then you get out and you start getting people together and you start doing what God's going to do. And then all of a sudden going, was it really God? What? Man. So Gideon, now I'm not sure what Gideon's feelings were. I mean, it doesn't say here, but it does say that he did this. It says he went to God. It says, this is verse 36. If you will deliver Israel through me as you have spoken, behold, God, check this out. If you're going to deliver Israel through me, the valiant warrior that I am, I have no clue what I'm doing, right? So let's just make this straight. If you're going to use me, then I'm going to take this fleece, and I'm going to put it out. And then in the morning when I get up, all the ground, I want all the ground, the grass, everything, dry. And then the fleece that I put out, like a sponge kind of thing, right? When I go out to get that, I want that to be wet. That way I know, God, that if the fleece is wet and the ground around it is dry, then I know, right? I know this is it. So it says, if the dew on the fleece is on the fleece only, and it is dry on the ground, then I will know that you will deliver Israel through me. So, God, this is the only thing I need. I just need to put this fleece out, and if the ground is dry and the fleece is wet, then I know. So he goes out in the morning. Dude, you got to check this out. I mean, you already did it. You gave this, like, commitment to God. You're ready. You got your plan. So he goes out and he grabs this thing, and he takes it over a bowl. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking, what size bowl is this? But it was enough to be impressive enough that they put it in the Bible. So there's this bowl. So I'm thinking a pretty decent sized bowl, right? And he takes this fleece and he squeezes it out and it fills up the bowl. That's how much water was on the fleece. So the dew from the night time and the morning time came on and it just absorbed it. But all the grass and the ground was totally dry. Ha! Proof! God, you're with me! But, nah, you know what? You think about this. In the night, the dew came on the ground. You know that moisture that comes on the ground in the morning on your windshield every morning makes it all messy? Your car kind of gets that dew. It could have been. Now, you got to think about this, especially if you're Gideon, right? You got to think about this. If the dew was on the ground, the sponge absorbs more than the grass. The ground, it doesn't hold the moisture as much. It's like a sponge, right? I mean, you go to your sink and wet a sponge, it holds the water. So God, you know what? I mean, I don't want to bother you or anything, but I mean, and sorry about this. And he literally does apologize to God here. He's like, I'm sorry about this, but can I ask you one more thing? He goes, I kind of got that backwards. You know what? That's us. We try to get God to do something to prove to us that he's really in this. And that's why whenever you hear about Jesus talking to the Pharisees, yeah, there was Philistines at that time, the Pharisees, and he's talking to them, and they keep asking for a sign. Give us a sign. He goes, man, there's no sign I could give you except the sign of Jonah, which is talking about Jesus is going to die and then 3 days later raise from the dead. But what he's talking about is, it doesn't matter how many signs I give you, you're not going to believe. So here Gideon is asking for another sign. And we do this. We're like, God, are you really with me? Let me win the lottery. Then I know you're with me. Then I'm for sure that you let me win the lottery, we're in, right? So here you have Gideon talking to God, going, yeah, kind of mess this up because the ground could have dried a lot faster than the fleece because the fleece absorbs water. So how about I put it out again, and then you make everything wet around the fleece, and then the fleece be totally dry. Then we got something. So sure enough, he does that. Do not let your anger burn against me, that I may speak once more. Please let me make a test once more of the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, and there be dew on the ground. God did so that night, for it was dry only on the fleece, and the dew was on the ground. Some of the things we have to go through to prove that God is with us. But let me tell you something. Look at the part that God played in this. God did it. He loves you so much. He knows that you're in doubt. He knows that you're having problems struggling with this new relationship that you have. He knows that he calls you to do things that's bigger than what you are. And he knows it's hard for you to trust a God that you cannot see. But he's doing this as he walks you through. And just like with Gideon, Gideon's trying his best to get to understand how God works and how do I know you're really with me. And it's that game that you kind of have to go through, those steps that you kind of have to take to say, this wasn't God's plan. This was Gideon's plan. But you know, God went along with it. Whatever it is in your life, however you're building this relationship with God, you know what? Just stick to it. You know what? You're going to make some mistakes. God never made the mistake. God said, go do it, and I'm going to be there with you. That's how God works. But along the way, you get nervous, and God walks right along there with you. God went through this with Gideon. And then it just proved that. And I think that you must prove that God's with you whenever you're going to do something that God called you to do. I think you must prove that God's with you. And I mean that you need to ask God. You need to seek God. You need to get down on your knees and you need to pray. You need to spend time with God. You need to read the Bible and confirm that God called you. Don't just go by a voice that's in your head and say, God called me to do this. No, you're going to go beyond that. You're going to seek God, because when God calls you to do something, you're going to go out and do it. And there's going to be times that you're going to get lonely. You're going to get depressed. You're going to get to a point that you think that God's not in it. You're going to get to a place that you're going to think that God has abandoned you. Have you read Lamentations that we went through a few weeks ago, where Lamentations, the prophet is praying out to God saying, are you really shooting the arrows at me? I mean, that's where you're like, God, you've turned against me. Man, we get there, and if you say you're not there, either you're not in the battle, or you really, you haven't got to that point yet. I don't know, because every Christian that I know that has went out and really obeyed God, getting to a point where they get lonely, they get depressed, feel like God's turned against them, and it's part of the process that we all go through to learn to trust God. Because we're not used to trusting anything that we can't see. It's not tangible. It's not there. We need to touch it, feel it, see it, know it's going to work. It needs to have a dollar value to it. Give me $1 million, God. I can make this work. God doesn't need $1 million, and he can still make it work. And this next part of Gideon's life is exactly where we all have to be. If you're going to grow and do what God's calling you to do, you got to see it, because if you're depending on anything else besides God, you're going to fail every time. You can only trust God. You didn't win the lottery. You don't have a lot of help. God called you to do something. You don't know how in the world you're going to do it. Gideon goes out and he gets a lot of men. This is in chapter 7. Goes out and gets a lot of men, starts building an army because God's called him to do something big. God's going to do this for Israel through Gideon. Gideon, just like one of us, goes out and tries to get the best of everything, the best men, the best equipment, whatever he can get his hands on. He's going to do this. He is ready to go and do God's work. And then the Lord said to Gideon, this is in chapter 7, verse 2. The Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands. What in the world is God doing? We're going to fight a battle against a very mean and humongous group of men. They have intimidated us for years. I've got a huge army, but small in comparison to what they have. And you're telling me I have too many. Yeah. See, God has more going on than what we have going on. God's plan is not for you to win the battle. God's plan is for you to trust him. Winning the battle will just come with it. You want to get to know God? Don't worry about the battle. Worry about serving God. The process of learning to trust God is an amazing journey. But it's not about the journey either, right? It's really about putting your trust in God. It's not about the things that happen. It's not about the whole process. It's about you learn to trust God. See, he says to him right here, he says, you have too many for me to give Midian into their hands. He says, for Israel will become boastful. Check this out. If God gave you the ability to do it by yourself, if he gave you $1 million, if he gave you all the resources, you would go around saying, hey, I did it. The reason we are successful here in this church is because of me and my money and my gifts and my talents. The reason that this place is filled up, the reason that the grass is green, and the reason that the walls are painted, which I'm naming everything that's not in this church, the reason that we have tile on the floor is because I donated so much money. We got all this done. The reason we have the mobile stage is because of us. The reason we reach people is because of us. It's all about us. And God is saying, I don't want that. You see that? If you were in a place that you're going to look like the hero, God's probably saying, not in my house. God's the parent of us. He makes the rules, and he will get all the glory. We don't go around and say, God, you're good and all, but I can handle this. I got this on my own. No, you don't. It's that place that we come to a point in our life that we see that who God is and who we are. He said to him, now this is funny because a lot of people don't get this. Now therefore came to proclaim the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is afraid and trembling, let him return and depart to Mount Gilead. All right, so God tells him he's got too many people. So he's got 32,000 people ready to go to battle. 32,000. Gideon has really got some troops. And he goes out there and says, hey, I just heard from God. He's not happy with this. Got too big of a group. I mean, could you imagine me coming here and telling you guys this? Hey, guys, thanks for coming to church today, but before the service starts, if any of you really want to go home and have a brunch or breakfast or whatever, you guys can leave, and then whoever wants to stay can. I mean, there's people, hey, brunch, all right. So he basically went to this army and said to them, he said, hey, any of you that don't want to get killed today, you can go home. I mean, he just said, hey, any of you that are fearful and trembling, you can leave. Now, you'd think maybe 100 or so, maybe 1,000. 22,000 of the 32 turned and left. I mean, it was like, hey, you want me to talk you into leaving or anything? I mean, dude, they're like, hey, see ya. I mean, it was like a heartbeat. All right, we're out of here. Any of you that's fear and trembling, you me? They're all left. He's left with 10,000 people to go against the Midianites, which is humongous now. Even more than before, because now it was going to be a battle, but now it's going to be just a crush. They're going to kill us. 10,000 people to go into battle. They barely have weapons. I said at kids' camp they had guns. They could have. No, they couldn't. God comes up to 10,000 men. God, hey, dude, did you see that? Could you imagine Gideon going to God? You were right. I had 32,000 men. And then I told him that whole fear and trembling thing. 22,000 men left. 22,000 of them just took off. Yeah, I mean, we got 10,000. All right, God, we're ready. You still have too many. What? Whoa. Oh, wow. Oh, God. I didn't say we kept 22,000. I said 22,000 left. Now we have 10,000. We have 10,000. Like 22,000 left. You have too many. Do you know? This will be my question to God. Do you know how big the Midianites are? That is not small. They are prepared to kick. They are. I want you to take the men down to the water. I want them to drink. And the ones that kneel down and drink in the water. And then there's going to be the ones that lap like a dog. And they use their tongue to drink the water. I want you to keep the ones that reach down and drink. The ones that use their tongue and lap like a dog to drink. The ones that kneel down, I want you to get rid of them. Send them away. Okay, that's weird. Could you imagine? Okay, God. Word from God today. Let's go have a drink of water and see how you do it. I watched Jake yesterday. Drink, just gotta say, it's about drinking, right? We went out to breakfast, and Jake, I have never seen anybody drink hot chocolate like that. He made sure nothing on that cup was left with hot chocolate. Dude, he cleaned that. See, we all drink different. Dude, he did not miss a sip on that hot chocolate. These guys go down to the to get the water, and 300 of them, I'm new at math, 300 of them lapped like a dog. The rest were sent away out of 10,000. Gideon said, okay, I have 300 men. You know why? It makes sense. First, we got rid of the fearful and the trembling. See how God works? The ones that were going to just be in your way anyway. And then you bring the ones who are going to drink by kneeling on the ground and putting their face into the water. Well, God doesn't need anybody that's going to have their face into the water and not paying attention to what's going on. The men that would reach down into the water and bring it up to their face, they could still look at the people approaching and know when the enemy's going to attack. They could continue to drink the water and stay on guard. There was only 300 of them. But 300 of them believed in what they were doing. 300 of them were ready. He had to eliminate all the rest, but he had 300 people that had the mindset and the heart to go out and do what God was calling them to do. Could you imagine that? Yes, you can. You can imagine this, because each and every one of you are called by God to do something that's way beyond what you can do. And you're going to look and say, God, if you would bless me with this amount of money, if you would bless me with this amount of gifts, this amount of resources, if you would bless me, then I'll go do it. Well, God's saying, no. You don't get to make up the rules. I make up the rules. And if I called you to do it, I'm going to provide you with everything you need to go do it. But you have to know that everything that I provide you with is what I know that you need. See, Gideon thought maybe he needed a lot of men. He didn't. God's on his side. You can't lose. Gideon probably thought he needed a lot more resources, but he didn't. And then you're going to get down to this point where you have 300 men going against a major army. You're going to have what you feel like is just a little bit compared to what you got to do. Because God doesn't want you to look at that little bit that you have. Don't look at the 300 men. We all do, because we sit there going, dude, 300 men against the thousands of the Midianites? Stop looking at the 300 men. Now look at God. thousands of men on the Midianites, 300 men with Gideon and God. I feel sorry for the Midianites, don't you? Whatever God's calling you to do, and you say, hey, I just have a little bit of money, I just have a little bit of resources, I don't have enough. If you got God, I feel sorry for whoever you're going against, because you're going to do exactly what God told you to do, and it's going to happen. God's going to win, and you're part of that. Gideon goes out, and look at what happens because of God putting him in that place. Now, the number of those who lapped with putting their hands to their mouth was 300 men. And it says that, and then it says there was still this one piece. You know, you just went through all this, and no matter what part of the process you're in, where you're starting to trust God, and really, now he's got 300 men. He didn't ask, Gideon, from what we see, didn't ask for this. This is a gift from God. God said, I want you to do this. I want you to go to the edge of the camp where the Midianites are. I want you to go to the edge, and I want you to hear what they're talking about. Because if you're afraid, take a friend with you. Take somebody with you. And he goes down, and this is in verse 13 of chapter 7. When Gideon came, behold, there was a man relating a dream to his friend. Isn't this great? God is just letting Gideon know, you only have 300 men. They have a big army. But check out what's happening inside their camp. This man is telling a dream that he had that night. He said, behold, I had a dream. A loaf of barley bread was tumbling into the camp of Midian, and it came to the tent, and it struck it, so it fell and turned upside down, so that the tent lay flat. His friend replied, this is nothing less than the sword of Gideon and the sword of Joash, a man of Israel. God has given Midian and all of the camp into his hands. Here's this big army. They have lots of skills. They have lots of resources. They have lots of people. And they're afraid of the work of Gideon because he's in the hand of the Lord. There's people out there that look like they have more than us, but they look at Christians and go, wow, they have so much better than us. They're so much more powerful than us. Yes, it's because we have God. Our number doesn't matter. It's the God we serve. We serve truth. Obviously, now is when God gives the wisdom to Gideon how we're going to do this. He gives him a plan. Isn't it great when you get to this point? So far, you went from being a sinner. You listened to the prophet. You listened to the angel. You obeyed God. You questioned a little bit. You gained your maturity, your faith, your belief. You began to grow and mature in this, right? You learned to trust God. He took all your men away and gave you 300. I mean, you got a small army. He gave you proof that they're scared of you. He's worked you from your sinful ways to this mature believer. That's what he does with us. Do not think that all of a sudden you're a mature believer. You must go through a process of trusting God. Step by step. Go through it and trust God more and trust God more. Because the next thing he's going to tell you to do is, here's what I want you to do. So Gideon and the 100 of men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, and they had just posted the watch. And they blew their trumpets and smashed their pitchers, and they were in their hands. When the three companies blew the trumpet and broke the pitchers, they had the torches in their left hand and the trumpets in their right hand, and they had guns and all this ammunition and cannons. And no, they didn't. They didn't have any of that, did they? They had torches, so he separated them into three. So 100 here, 100 here, and 100 here. And he said, at my word, this is what we're going to do. We have these torches and these pitchers, and then we're going to break those, and we're going to hold them up. Well, from the Midianites' view, all around the land, there's, you got this camp over here, this camp over here, and this camp over here, that's surrounded. And then all of a sudden, at the same time, now there's only 300 of them. And there's this huge army of Midianites down here. They look up on the hill there, and all of a sudden in the night hours, right at night, they see this glow because of all those torches that went up at once. Flaming fire. From there, the visual has to be solid, man. It looks like a bazillion people are coming at you because Gideon was given this message from God how to do this. The illusion that was given to the Midianites was Gideon, which they're already afraid of. God already put fear in their heart. They now see these torches all around them coming in. Looks like a bazillion people, or so I make that word up. That number up. And then all these people are coming up. And then this crazy thing happens. It's something that should happen more in churches, but it doesn't. People start shouting and screaming. And then they start shouting the glory of God. And then they start shouting and blowing trumpets. And they're so excited. They're going down to battle. Scares the Midianites like crazy. And they take off. They don't even stay to fight. They chase them down with their swords. And they win with 300 men. But the battle's not the big deal. The big deal is that Gideon learned to trust God. It doesn't matter about winning the battle moves on. People read the next stories and they say, oh, Gideon finally got prideful, or he finally did this, or he finally did that. I'm like, no, that happens to all of us. We all go through a process. He obeyed God and he won, and he learned to trust God. My wife and I have been through so many battles. You guys have been through it. Man, when you go through the battles and then you see God work, you're like, wow, God did this. I hear a lot of Christians say, we want to be able to pray and heal the sick. I hear it all the time. If I had a gift, I'd pray so I could heal the sick. Really? What are you doing to do that? Go back, admit you're a sinner. Hear from God. God, is that you calling me to be the one to go out and pray for people? Because he actually called the church to be able to go do that. We should be able to do that. And they said after that, go out and do what he says. Well, you're going to have a lot of stumbling blocks in your way. Clean your house out. Get stuff out of your way. Start obeying God. Start listening. Start doing the things that need to be done. And then guess what? Learn to trust God. Hey, you better trust God, because if you go and pray for somebody and you're telling them you're going to heal them in the name of Jesus Christ and it doesn't happen, bummer. No. You need to know that God called you to go and pray for somebody. Because if they're not healed, you got a lot of explaining to do. You better know God. You better know God good. Your house needs to be clean. Your heart needs to be right. And you need to hear the voice of God saying, I need you to go out there and lay hands on people and pray with them. I need you to go out and do some miracles. I need you to go out and beat the battle against the enemy. I need you to go do that. But don't do it on your own. You'll have too many men and you'll lose the battle. You'll be like Gideon going out with 32,000 men. You imagine him doing that? He would have lost. Because he didn't have the power of God yet. God's calling you to do something. It may not be healing the sick. It may just be anything in the ministry. We have so many things we could do in the ministry. God's calling you, but let go of the mess. Let go of everything else and just grab onto God. With God, I can do anything because all things are possible through him.